I read her secret letters to her ex. The wedding was already paid for. My name's Evan Brooks. I'm 26 years old, and up until 2 weeks ago, I thought I had everything I ever wanted. I work in IT for the city of San Diego. Nothing flashy, just secure, honest work. I like systems that make sense. Code, databases, server logs. I guess I've always gravitated toward things that don't lie to you. People, though? That's another story. Her name was Rachel Linwood, 27, smart, steady, with this calm kind of presence that made you feel like things were under control just by standing near her. I met her 3.5 years ago at a fundraiser for the local library. I'd gone alone, something about free coffee, and a night not spent staring at my apartment ceiling sounded appealing. She was sorting books in the corner, wearing a soft gray sweater and jeans. I made some dumb joke about someone trying to sneak 50 Shades into the classics section, and she laughed with this low, real laugh that hit me straight in the chest. We started seeing each other soon after that. Nothing dramatic, no whirlwind, just dinners that turned into weekends, conversations that stretched past midnight, then mornings where waking up next to her felt right. It was like finding the missing piece to a puzzle you didn't know was incomplete. A year in, we moved in together. 2 years later, I proposed. She said yes before I even finished asking. We bought a small place just outside Claremont, not far from where she'd grown up. She wanted a garden, a space for quiet mornings, something stable. I was ready to give her all of it. I thought I knew who she was. I thought I'd built a future with someone I could trust, with everything. That was before last Saturday. I'd come home from a run, nothing fancy, just a few miles along the bay, and Rachel wasn't home. She'd left her laptop on the kitchen table, open, screen still on. That wasn't unusual. She worked remotely a couple days a week as a mortgage loan officer, and she had a habit of getting up mid-email to make tea or take a call. But this time, there was a tab open. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't looking for anything. But the subject line caught my eye before I even realized what I was looking at. Last night was too much. At first, I thought maybe it was junk, spam, one of those scam emails people still somehow fall for. But then I saw her name in the thread, Rachel Linwood. Her full name, her email, her voice. Except this wasn't work. This wasn't anything I recognized. There were dozens of them, not emails, letters, intimate, poetic, painfully vivid exchanges, written like something out of a novel, except I knew her voice. I knew the way she used ellipses when she was trying to flirt. I knew the shorthand she used when she didn't want to spell out how far things had gone. The guy's name was Brendan. I knew the name from one story, a short one she'd told me maybe a year into our relationship. Her ex before me, someone she said had broken her heart in college, someone she never looked back on. She called him a mistake, dead weight. But there he was, not dead, not in the past, and certainly not out of her heart. They talked about missing each other, about regrets, about our bed, about my name being spoken like an obstacle. I didn't make a sound, I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just stood there in the middle of our kitchen while the kettle screamed behind me. I stood there until it ran dry. It's strange how fast your brain can fracture something you thought was solid. One moment you're planning a wedding, talking about registry colors and how many people can actually fit in your parents' backyard, and the next, you're wondering if any of it was ever real. Was I a safety net, a placeholder? I closed the laptop, not to hide it, just because I couldn't look at it anymore. I sat on the couch for hours. I don't remember eating. I don't remember checking the time. I just remember silence. The kind of silence that crawls under your skin and whispers that nothing will ever feel the same again. When Rachel came home later that night, she walked in like nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek. She asked if I wanted Thai or Mexican, and all I could think was, how long have you been pretending? I didn't confront her. Not then. I needed to be sure of what I was looking at. I needed space to breathe, to process, to not completely fall apart in front of the woman I'd planned to marry. But the damage was already done. She just didn't know it yet. Rachel and I met when I least expected to meet anyone. I wasn't looking for love. I was just a guy in his early 20s trying to figure out what came after college. I had a few freelance contracts, some temp jobs, and a whole lot of doubt. She was different, stable, kind, someone who made you feel safe without ever having to say it out loud. We didn't fall fast, but we fell steady. The first time I heard about Brendan was on our second or third date. We were at a taco stand in North Park, sitting on plastic chairs under those yellow floodlights. She was talking about her past, nothing heavy, just surface stuff. Brendan came up in a half-joking way. "He was a mistake," she said, waving her hand like she was shooing away the memory. Taught me what not to look for. I remember laughing. I remember thinking how lucky I was that someone like her had been through the worst and still landed on me. When I proposed to her, it wasn't some huge production. No drone footage, no hidden photographers. Just me, her, a quiet dinner at Sunset Cliffs, and a ring I'd spent 3 months picking out. She cried. Said she'd never been more sure of anything. And I believed her. God help me, I believed every word. Until last weekend, I didn't have a single reason to doubt her. I would have bet my life she was loyal. Turns out, I was just the safe bet. I didn't mean to snoop, that's not who I am. It was a Saturday night. Rachel was out with her co-workers, some quarterly dinner they always held after closing a big mortgage deal. I stayed home, nothing unusual. I did laundry, ran a few updates on her laptop. She'd been complaining it was running slow, and that's when I saw it. Her email was open, not the inbox, one of those draft folders she must have forgotten to close. I don't know what drew me to it. Maybe instinct, maybe stupidity. But I clicked. There were 13 drafts, 13 letters, all to the same name, Brendan. They weren't official emails, not "Hi, how have you been?" They were long, rambling, soul-pouring things. Paragraphs of her talking about how she still thought about him, how she missed the way he made her feel, how she didn't feel alive with me the way she had with him, how she knew what they had was broken, but that didn't stop her from wanting it again. She talked about our engagement like it was a trap she'd walked into, like I was the compromise, the backup plan, the safe one. She wrote about our sex life, compared it, said things like, "Jason's sweet, but it's not the same." That one line kept repeating in my head for hours. It's not the same. Like I was less than, like she was settling. And through all of it, he never responded, not once. Either he blocked her or ignored her, but she kept writing anyway, saving them in the drafts like a secret garden she visited in the dark. By the time I closed the laptop, my hands were shaking. I sat in our kitchen for hours. No music, no phone, no movement. Just me and the realization that I'd been sleeping beside a stranger for months. The worst part wasn't even the words. It was knowing that while she smiled at me, while we planned our wedding, she was keeping that part of herself hidden, feeding it in secret like a second life. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stopped believing. I didn't sleep that night. My heart kept pacing like it was trying to outrun what I'd seen. The next morning, I didn't call her. I didn't yell or cry or ask her to explain. I just sat there, in that same spot where I'd first read the messages and started making a list. Not of questions, of tasks. I changed the locks. I called the bank. I moved our joint savings into a private account under my name, the one we'd built together for our honeymoon. Then I called the venue and canceled the wedding. No one knew yet, not her parents, not mine. I didn't leave a note, just vanished. She must have noticed by afternoon. My phone lit up with calls and messages. "Where are you? Are you okay? Can we talk?" But I didn't answer. Instead, I drove 40 minutes out of town and checked into a motel behind a gas station. Beige curtains, cigarette smell, paper-thin walls. It was perfect. That night, I lay on the scratchy bedspread and stared at the ceiling. Her words still echoed in my head. Every line she wrote to him, her ex, like I never existed. I felt rage, but also something colder than that. I felt relief, because the silence was mine now. I turned off my phone. I didn't want to be found. I just wanted the world to be quiet long enough for me to finally breathe. The next few days blurred together. I worked remotely, using the motel's inconsistent Wi-Fi to log in. It felt strange, writing clean code, replying to team chats, pretending everything was fine. In reality, I was floating somewhere between anger and numbness. Grief maybe, but not for a person. More like mourning the life I thought I had. In the quiet hours, I walked. There was a nature trail behind the highway. Pine trees, birdsong, a place to think. Sometimes I sat on a bench and stared at nothing, trying to make sense of how love could turn into performance, how someone could lie so casually and still smile at me in the kitchen. She kept messaging. Her texts piled up, long paragraphs, tearful emojis. Please just talk to me. I didn't read past the previews. I couldn't. Not yet. My mom called once, so did my best friend Dan. I answered him, told him I was safe, said I just needed time. He didn't ask questions, just said, "Whatever you need, man. I'm here." On the fourth day, I looked at the non-refundable tickets to Alaska, our honeymoon. I was supposed to be seeing glaciers and eating smoked salmon on a train through the mountains. Instead, I changed the name on the reservation. I figured if I couldn't erase the betrayal, maybe I could bury it under snow. I packed my coat, booked the flight, and for the first time in a week, I felt something like peace. The wind in Anchorage cut through my coat like glass, the kind of cold that made your teeth ache and your thoughts clearer than you wanted them to be. I'd arrived the night before, checked into a small lodge on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just a cabin with creaky wood floors, a fireplace that didn't work quite right, and windows looking out at a snow-covered forest that felt untouched. It was beautiful, stark, honest. I took walks in the morning, drank coffee that tasted like ashes, and read books I had no intention of finishing. I wasn't here for distraction. I was here to face the silence. I thought I'd outrun her. I was wrong. On the third day, I was coming back from a tour bus drop-off, sleet soaking through my boots, when I saw her. Ellie, standing on the steps of my cabin like she belonged there, like this wasn't madness. She wore a parka I'd never seen, hood pulled tight, eyes red from either cold or crying. Probably both. I stopped in my tracks. Time didn't freeze. My breath didn't catch. I just stood there and thought, of course she came. Of course. "Jason," she said, her voice barely audible over the crunch of snow as I approached. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer, just unlocked the door and let us both in. She took off her coat, hands shaking. I poured 2 mugs of coffee, set them on the table between us. We sat. Silence stretched until it broke. "I didn't mean for any of it to happen," she said. "Didn't mean to write letters to your ex?" I asked. My voice was flat, not angry, just exhausted. "I was confused," she whispered. "We weren't connecting. And he understood me in a way that—" "Don't," I said. "Don't romanticize it. You lied for months." Her face twisted, like she wanted to cry but knew it wouldn't help. "We never met. It was just words, fantasy. That's all it was." "That's all love is sometimes," I said. "Words, promises, futures that feel real." She leaned forward, pleading now. "You left without a word. You didn't even let me explain." "I read your explanations," I said. "Every saved message, every paragraph where you called me safe and him exciting. I don't think you get to explain anymore." We sat in the quiet, 2 strangers who used to share a bed. Finally, she said, "I didn't come here to win you back. I just wanted you to see that I'm sorry." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I saw not the woman I was going to marry, but someone I used to know, someone who made a choice she couldn't undo. "I believe you're sorry," I said, "but I don't think that changes anything." Her eyes welled, but she didn't fight me on it. She just nodded, stood up slowly, and reached for her coat. "Goodbye, Jason," she said. "Goodbye, Ellie." She closed the door behind her. I stood for a long time before I picked up her untouched coffee cup and poured it down the sink. Then I sat back down, lit a fire that finally caught, and watched the snow fall outside. This time, the silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like closure. The plane touched down in Austin just past midnight. The city lights blinked beneath the cloud cover like scattered memories, and for a moment I sat frozen in my seat, unsure what I was coming home to anymore. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Dishes still drying on the rack, a forgotten sweatshirt on the couch. Everything looked smaller, emptier, but somehow lighter too. The next day I went back to work. My boss raised his eyebrows when I walked through the door. "Thought you'd taken a permanent sabbatical," he said with a smile. "Almost did," I replied. I didn't tell him about Ellie, about the letters or the cabin or the last cup of coffee she never drank. I just worked, quietly, purposefully, like putting one brick back into place after a storm. My parents came by that weekend. They brought food, asked cautious questions, and hugged me longer than they used to. I told them only what mattered. It's over. I'm okay. Really. Most nights, I wrote in a notebook, not for anyone else, just to pull the knots loose from my own head. It helped. The house felt more like mine with every passing day. Her stuff was gone. The wedding photos never made it up. My name on the lease meant something again. I wasn't better yet, but I wasn't broken either. I was starting over. And that, I was learning, was its own kind of peace. I sat on the back porch that Sunday morning, coffee in one hand, pen in the other. My old journal lay open on my lap, worn now, dog-eared and soft at the corners. The last page stared up at me, blank, waiting. It had been 5 weeks since Alaska, since Ellie found me and begged for a second chance she never earned, since I looked into her eyes and realized the weight was gone. She couldn't touch me anymore. I'd spent most of the days since putting myself back together, not for revenge, not for pride, just to feel like me again. And this last entry, it wasn't about her. Not anymore. It was about me. I wrote about trust, not in others, but in myself, about how hard it was to listen to that small voice, the one that says something's wrong, even when you want so badly for it not to be. I wrote about pain and how it doesn't just disappear, but how it softens, shifts, stops being the center of everything. I wrote, "You don't always get the closure you think you want. Sometimes you just get the truth, and it's enough." I closed the notebook, exhaled slowly, and watched a pair of birds land on the fence. For the first time in months, I didn't feel haunted. I didn't feel hopeful either. I just felt quiet, and in that quiet, I knew I'd made it through.